This is help with solving quadratic equations. The quadratic equations I'm going to focus on in this video only have an x squared in it, or an m squared. They don't have an m to the first power in it. Two tips you want to keep in mind when solving. Goal is to get the x squared, or the variable squared, by itself on one of the side of the equal signs. And there's usually two answers when you're solving this. Not always, but usually. So, first problems, easy steps. I have m squared minus 36 equals 0. I want the m squared by itself. So you add 36 to both sides. So m squared equals positive 36. And then you take the square root of both sides. So then m equals plus or minus. Since we're taking the square root, there's two possible answers we could plug in. The square root of 36 just happens to work out to be 6. If you didn't know that, you can still use the factor tree, and we would have 3 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So there's a pair of 2's times the pair of 3's, which again gives you 6. So that would be your answer. If you went back, checked your work, positive 6 squared minus 36 equals 0. Positive 6 squared is 36, and 36 minus 36 equals 0. So the first one works out. The second one, negative 6 squared minus 36 equals 0. Negative 6 squared is a positive 36 minus 36, which again equals 0. So now the second one. I have 4x squared equals 48. I want the x squared by itself. So in this case, since I'm multiplying by 4, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So x squared equals 12. The opposite of squaring is taking the square root of both sides. So x equals plus or minus. The square root of 12 is not a nice number, so we need to use the factor tree to simplify. So 12 breaks down to 2 and 6, 2 and 3. Pair of 2's on the outside, 3's left underneath the radical, and your answer is positive or negative 2 times the square root of 3. There are times where there's a few more steps needed. So for these multi-step problems, again, my whole goal is to get x squared by itself, so it's just like solving. Add 135 to both sides. 3x squared equals positive 135. Divide both sides by 3, and x squared equals 45. Take the square root of both sides, and x equals plus or minus 45. We need to use the factor tree to break down. So this can break down into 5 times 9. 5 can't break down any further. 9 breaks down into 3 times 3. There's a pair of 3's on the outside, and 5 is left underneath the radical. So your answer is x equals plus or minus 3 times the square root of 5. For the second problem, again, you need to solve. Add 1 to both sides. So 1/4 x squared equals 1. In this case, since I'm multiplying by a fraction, I can get rid of it by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal. Cancels out, leaves me with a 1. So x squared equals 1 times 4 divided by 1 is just 4. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2. Again, if you didn't know that, you can use the factor tree. 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. There's a pair of 2's on the outside and nothing left underneath the radical. Your answer is x equals plus or minus 2. There will be situations where there could be no solution, and here's a few problems that demonstrate that. My first problem, x squared equals negative 16. The x squared is all by itself, so I could just take the square root of both sides. The problem here is nothing times itself will give me a negative number. Square root of 16 does not break down into two numbers that are the exact same. Since I cannot simplify this, this has no real solution. Okay? Even if you were to work backwards, let's say I guess negative 4 is the solution. Well, negative 4 squared gives me a positive 16. Positive 4 squared still gives me a positive 16. So I'm out of options, and once again, back to no real solution. The second one isn't as obvious, so solve it like normal. Get the x squared by itself. I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides. 3x squared equals negative 15. Divide both sides by 3. And x squared equals negative 5. Take the square root of both sides. Again, the problem is I have a negative underneath the radical. I can't simplify that. Nothing times itself will get me to negative 5. So this has no real solution. So anytime you see a negative number underneath the radical, no real solution is going to be your answer.